In the quiet coastal kingdom of Argos, long before history began to write itself down in careful records, there lived a young man named Perseus, raised gently by his mother on a small, sea-swept island called Seriphos. He grew up unaware of the destiny quietly waiting for him, tending nets and boats along a shoreline that seemed, for many peaceful years, entirely ordinary. The island's king, a proud and difficult man, grew weary of Perseus's constant presence, and so one evening, half in jest and half in genuine hope of removing him, the king declared a bold challenge: bring back the head of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze could turn any living creature to solid, silent stone. Perseus accepted the challenge calmly, without bravado, understanding simply that a promise, once spoken aloud, deserved to be honored fully. He set out from the island's small stone harbor at dawn, the sea calm and silver beneath a soft rising sun, uncertain exactly where his journey would lead him, but resolved nonetheless to see it through. Fortune, or perhaps the quiet attention of the gods, favored him early in his travels. The goddess Athena appeared to him along a quiet forest path, her presence calm and steady, offering him a polished bronze shield that gleamed like still water, along with gentle guidance on how such a shield might be used wisely rather than as a simple weapon. Soon after, the god Hermes found him resting beneath an old olive tree and gifted him a pair of winged sandals, light as breath itself, along with a curved sword capable of cutting through even the toughest, most ancient scales. Perseus accepted both gifts with quiet gratitude, sensing that this task, however dangerous, was no longer his to face entirely alone. His path eventually led him to three ancient sisters known as the Graeae, who shared a single eye and a single tooth between them, passing each carefully from hand to hand in an unbroken, ancient rhythm. Perseus waited patiently at the edge of their dim cave, and in a brief moment between their exchange, gently intercepted the eye, offering fair trade for the directions he needed toward the Gorgon's distant, hidden lair. The journey onward grew steadily quieter, the landscape shifting from soft green hills into gray, wind-worn stone, until at last Perseus arrived at the entrance of a shadowed cavern near the edge of the known world. Statues stood scattered outside its entrance, weathered figures of animals and unfortunate travelers, each one frozen mid-motion, caught forever in whatever moment they had unknowingly met Medusa's gaze. Perseus paused there a long while, steadying his breathing, reminding himself calmly of Athena's careful guidance. He would not look upon Medusa directly, not even once, but would instead rely entirely on the smooth, polished surface of his bronze shield, watching her reflected image as one might watch calm water rather than a blinding sun. He entered the cave slowly, his winged sandals barely brushing the cold stone floor, sword held steady, shield angled carefully to catch whatever lay ahead within its polished surface. The cave's air grew heavier the deeper he walked, filled with a stillness that felt, somehow, both ancient and endlessly patient, as though it too had been waiting a very long time for this particular moment to arrive. At last, reflected faintly in his shield, Perseus saw her, Medusa, resting quietly among the still stone remains of those who had come before him, her serpent hair moving in slow, gentle motion, despite the utter silence surrounding her. For a brief moment he felt something unexpected, not fear alone, but a quiet, complicated sorrow for a creature so thoroughly isolated by her own nature. Guided entirely by the shield's calm reflection, Perseus moved with steady, deliberate purpose, his sword finding its mark in a single, decisive motion. It was over quickly, quietly, without struggle or grand confrontation. The ancient curse finally settled after generations of solitary watching. He wrapped Medusa's head carefully within a woven satchel Athena herself had provided, mindful even now to avoid any accidental glimpse of what remained of her petrifying gaze. The winged sandals lifted him gently from the cave floor, carrying him back out into open air, the pale morning light outside feeling, after so much stillness, remarkably soft and forgiving. His journey homeward carried him across unfamiliar lands and quiet seas, past kingdoms he had never known existed, each one blurring gently into the next beneath his steady, sandal-borne flight. In time, he would use what he carried wisely, not for needless destruction, but sparingly, thoughtfully, understanding fully the weight and responsibility of what he now possessed. Perseus eventually returned to Seriphos, the small island of his quiet childhood, to find his mother still gently waiting, unaware of everything he had endured on her behalf. The proud king who had sent him away met a fate entirely of his own making, undone by the very challenge he had once offered so carelessly. In the years that followed, Perseus set aside his sword and shield, choosing instead a life of calm governance and quiet family devotion, the wild adventure of his youth settling gently into distant, treasured memory. He spoke of Medusa rarely, and when he did, it was never with triumph alone, but with a quiet, thoughtful respect for the strange, sorrowful nature of the task fate had once asked of him. It is said that travelers passing near the ancient ruins of his kingdom, many generations later, would sometimes pause beside old carved reliefs depicting his journey, tracing the worn stone images of winged sandals and a polished shield with quiet fascination, imagining a young man who once faced an impossible gaze, not with anger, but with patience, calm preparation, and quiet, steady courage. And so the story of Perseus settled gently into memory, carried forward through countless generations not merely as a tale of monster and hero, but as a gentle reminder that courage often looks less like grand, thunderous battle, and more like careful preparation, quiet patience, and the steady willingness to face what frightens us indirectly, calmly, one thoughtful step at a time.
And so he returned to the shores of Seriphos, where she had